It happens every October, about the second or third week of the month, every year since 1998. It never fails to happen. I get sick to my stomach. Call it BCS-itis. It happens every year when the BCS standings are released. I get sick to my stomach, and it gets worse and worse by the week. And it gets worse and worse when I hear the TV analysts justify the system and try to tell us who's better than who, even when those two teams have not played and will not play because there's no playoff system. Mark Rogers TV, just a day after the BCS standings, the first edition released on Sunday. We've got Alabama and LSU at the top. Technically LSU at the top, followed by Alabama, then Oklahoma, Oklahoma State at 3 and 4. In listening to the analysts, those four appear to be the upper echelon. And then there's a second tier of Wisconsin and Stanford. Boise State's kind of lost out there somewhere, not given too much respect this year because, again, of its schedule. Clemson, undefeated, and with a very impressive resume of wins, and also Kansas State playing in the Big 12, the same as Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, completely discarded, not in the national championship talk. Not surprisingly, Clemson and Kansas State were not ranked to start the season, which of course should be completely irrelevant, but that has typically shaped the discussion, the debate, and the contenders coming down the stretch. Let's look at last season. Had a conversation with a Michigan State fan when the Spartans were still undefeated. He was all pumped up, psyched up, and I said, "Man, you guys run the table. What's going to happen?" He said, "It'll be great. We'll go to the Rose Bowl." Okay, at the same time, Ohio State was undefeated, ranked number 1 in the country, playing in the same conference. So basically the same schedule. What would have happened to Ohio State had they not tripped up to Wisconsin? Of course, the Buckeyes would have played in the national championship game. Two programs playing in the same conference treated completely differently. A la this year, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State versus Kansas State. Yeah, football fans, football analysts don't believe Kansas State's really that good. And you know what? It most likely will play itself out on the field that Kansas State's going to trip up maybe 2 or 3 times. But they should be given that chance on equal footing to play with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and be considered the same. For some reason, we have tiers built up, and they start with preconceived notions and projections to start the season, and they are tough to break. So some teams are given a much better chance of making their way to the 1 and 2 spots instead of others. Look at Clemson. Again, outside of LSU, probably with the best resume with wins over Virginia Tech, Florida State, and Auburn. But Clemson, way down the line at number 8, not considered a serious national championship contender. We're not going to change the system this year. It's the BCS. It's what it is. But if I have to hear once again that LSU's game with Alabama and the Oklahoma State matchups are de facto semifinal games, as I have heard in the past in other years, I'm going to get even sicker to my stomach. They are regular season games. They are not national semifinal games. And number 2, that it always works itself out, that's a complete misnomer. It has never worked itself out. Season by season, there have always been teams left on the outside that had similar credentials to the teams in the championship game. We could go every year since 1998, and here on Mark Rogers TV in the next few weeks, we will go every season since 1998 and explain why there have been teams left out that deserved to play in the national championship game just as much as the teams that got there. So it's not that there was a team in that shouldn't have been in, but there were just 6, 7 teams, sometimes as many as that number, that should have been in the championship game or a playoff. So there are no de facto semifinal games, and it doesn't work itself out. Stanford and Wisconsin could play in a Rose Bowl, winning 2 elite leagues, undefeated, and not have any chance of playing for a national championship. Would love to hear what you have to say about the BCS mess. It's the system we have, but do we have to kid ourselves and say it's legitimate? Tell me about it on Mark Rogers TV.